and I would rate the movie an 8.
Okay, I'm gonna give this movie a 7 out of 10.
And I'm going to rate Batman vs. Superman a 7.5 out of 10.
I'm going to rate this movie an 8 out of 10. I'm tempted to give it more because on an enjoyment factor, I would say a 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10. Alright, so I have to say I was very skeptical going into this movie, and I think part of the mixed critical response is partially about what people went into this movie expecting or hoping for. I mean, that's the case with any movie, but it's really true with this one. I went in with low expectations, but I had a glimmer of hope that it would deliver in a sort of Zack Snyder-ish way that Watchmen did for me. And it did. From the opening, where we see Bruce Wayne's parents get killed, and he's at the funeral and he's being lifted up by the bats, to where he's at Metropolis and the buildings are coming down and his own building comes down. All of that just sold the movie for me at that point. I loved it. I was like, this is just fantastic. Yeah, I was, smiling, and it was just great. And overall, it was one of the best movie experiences I've ever had. Just the beginning scene, the emotion that they captured from little personal stuff like the guy, Jack, praying to God, asking for forgiveness before the building collapsed and killed him, the little girl looking up at her mother who just presumably died in the building crash, the actor they casted for the little girl and just the emotions on her face. It was all very well done, and it kind of made me forget about Man of Steel, which I wasn't a fan of. So before we did this review, I was talking to David for a good half hour or more, and I was very caught up in the movie. I want to see it again. I loved it. And I kind of didn't realize some big things in this movie that were kind of glaringly bad. For one, Doomsday, Lex Luthor. Let's look at him. His character motivation, okay, he's worried about Superman. Fine, that makes sense. He wants to kill Superman. That makes sense too. But he creates Doomsday, who is possibly stronger than Superman. He unleashes him. What if Doomsday killed Superman? Then you have an unstoppable monster, who I guess is not as smart as Superman, but who's going to, possibly be an even worse threat. So how does that make sense? Just Lex Luthor in general, his character motivations weren't really fleshed out that much, and it was a little confusing. So that was kind of a problem. Superman, he had inner conflict, but it wasn't fleshed out enough. It was too fast. You had the scene with his father, the scene where he talks to his mother for a brief, less than a minute, and then she's hardly in it again. And Superman could have been better. But Batman, I loved. I loved Ben Affleck. You had Batman's character arc of losing faith in humanity, regaining faith after Superman sacrificed himself. You have him kind of seeing Superman as an alien, a threat, and then at the very last minute, he's reminded of his own mother and Superman's mother, and he sees that Superman is another human being who's at risk of losing his parents, just like he lost his parents, and he kind of comes to the realization that he shouldn't kill him. So I thought that made this movie, Batman made this movie. It had what Man of Steel didn't, character development, and a character who was very conflicted and kind of went through a change. So that made this movie for me. The visuals, I love the visuals. Batman being raised up by the bats, that was a dream. I wasn't sure if it was. I was kind of like, is this real? This is ridiculous. I loved it though, because it was such a cool visual scene. And this is what I didn't see in Man of Steel, the visuals that I loved from Zack Snyder. His parents' death scene, the way that was shot, was so good, just what I wanted. Superman could have been better, but Batman made up for it. That's pretty much my thoughts on the film.
Yeah, I agree with Thomas. I really enjoyed the movie. I went into it with no expectations because I hadn't seen the trailer, hadn't really read anything about it, so it was all a surprise to me. The funny story is that when they first introduced Wonder Woman, she's not wearing her Wonder Woman costume. She's just dressed like a normal woman. And I didn't know that it was Diana, that it was Wonder Woman. So, but she clearly was an important character, so I'm thinking to myself, and I'm saying out loud, I'm like, who is this woman? Who is she? Who is she? Who's she going to end up being? Not thinking, duh, it's Wonder Woman. They said she was going to be in this movie. But I think it's really cool how they brought her into the movie because you can tell Bruce Wayne is thinking the same thing. He's looking at her and he's like, who is this woman? She has a presence. She's mysterious. She's powerful. And I was feeling the same thing with Batman. And then when they show that picture of her and she's standing between like what looks like two Native Americans and she has a Wonder Woman costume on, you're just like, whoa, what is going on? Who is this person? Where has she been for the past 100 years? So I personally think that they did a really good job of setting up the Wonder Woman movie with this movie. And I love the part when they're facing Doomsday and Superman's on one side and Batman's on the other and they're looking at each other and they're like, who is this girl? Is she with you? No, I thought she was with you. And she's just like charging in at Doomsday, like, because I like that. Sometimes I think of the Justice League as like, there's Batman and Superman, and then everyone just kind of like follows their lead. But it's like, no, these are all superheroes and heroines of their own. They're their own person, they have their own story, and they can kick ass on their own. So that was so cool. And I really liked Ben Affleck's Batman. He was really good. I liked him better than Christian Bale.
Yeah, I didn't really like this movie very much. Unfortunately, I think I went into it looking for problems, which something I didn't want to do, but it ended up being the way it was. So as I was watching the movie, I was seeing all these things that didn't make sense. I did like Batman a lot. I thought he had a solid character arc. There were a lot of great visuals. I like just the look of this world and how comic booky it is. But as Thomas said, I didn't really think Superman's arc works very well at all. He goes from just not seeming to care about all the controversy at the beginning to then he goes through this thing of wanting to stop Batman because he thinks he's wrong, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then eventually just seems to give that up for no reason at all. He gives up being Superman, I guess, after the explosion at the Pentagon. And then the next time we see him, he decides he's going to be Superman again. So he just makes all these decisions, and we don't really see why or how he gets there, and it doesn't work very well. I don't really like a lot of the setup for Justice League in this movie. It doesn't feel like it has anything to do with this movie, and it's just distracting. And then the biggest problem, really, though, is that there's just a lot of plot holes and things that don't make sense. When Lex Luthor throws Lois Lane off the building, how does he know that Superman will get there and save her and like show up? Like, what if Superman was like somewhere else and had no idea what was going on? And then how does he know that like Batman is going to steal the kryptonite so that he can fight and possibly kill Superman? And if he has Doomsday, why does he even need Batman to fight Superman? Like, what is the point if you have this big monster who can easily destroy him?
Well, doesn't he say that that's his, like, after it doesn't work out, doesn't he say, well, Batman wasn't able to do it, and
Man
now I
didn't
have
kill
to
God.
Right, but he created Doomsday before that.
But
Well, he wanted Batman to kill him. He wanted a man to kill Superman. Well, he wanted everyone to see Superman
I
kill
think,
Batman.
like,
But
he's
again,
saying why
how
you
could he
have-
plan that out?
He was manipulating everything from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah,
I mean, they
he
made
had
that
no
clear.
idea.
Like, everything.
Right, but he can't know what Batman is going to do.
He's looked into them. He knows who he is, so
He knows he's Batman's
psychologically-
Bruce Wayne?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
then why
I
doesn't he
think-
reveal his secret identity when they throw him in jail?
Because Batman's gonna kill him if he does.
I think the scene when Batman and Superman both go to LexCorp, like, it seemed really clear to me that Lex Luthor knows exactly who these two guys are.
Yeah, but again, I'm not sure how that makes sense because why wouldn't he just reveal to the public who they are and ruin their lives?
Because he likes, Lex Luthor is a god complex and he likes having that control.
But he doesn't have it by the end when he's in jail.
And like, I just feel that like Batman
he
comes
could've
into
revealed
the
it at that
Do you
Batman
think he's scared of
comes
Batman at that point?
into the cell, and he puts the marking on the wall, and
He could have said it before then, though. I mean, He could have even threatened Batman and Wonder Woman and Lois
Reveal.
Lane to reveal things if they turned him in and prevented himself from going to jail. Anyway, it also doesn't make sense that Superman decides to pick up the kryptonite thing and kill Doomsday and die. Like, why wouldn't Wonder Woman do that, who's not going to be killed by
Well,
kryptonite?
she's holding down
It's a lasso.
Doomsday at that point, keeping him in place
With the
with
rope.
lasso.
With her rope.
Okay.
And Batman is Batman. He can't do it.
But anyway, it felt forced that he had to die and really rushed in a way that it didn't in the comic. And there's all kinds of things like that that don't make sense that I'm not going to get into right now. But yeah, I don't like this movie very much. Some things worked, but it's kind of a mess.
Okay, so I went into this movie not thinking I was going to like it because I looked at a lot of the reviews and a lot of people didn't seem to like it. There were some who did, but a lot of the people who I often agree with in the reviews really didn't like it that much. So I didn't think I was going to like it, which I think is partly the reason why, because I went in with low expectations why I liked it as much as I did. There was a lot of problems with this movie. It's very flawed. By the time it was over, I was like, I don't understand why people hate this so much. I think it's a very enjoyable movie, and I was smiling through a lot of it. And when a movie can make me smile, I think that's good in my book. But okay, let's get into it. I really like Ben Affleck as Batman. In my opinion, I think he's the best live-action Batman we've had. A lot of people before it came out didn't think Ben Affleck would do good in it. I never understood that. I think he looks the part. He's proven himself to be a very good actor, and I think he nails it. There's been a lot of controversy with Batman killing, and I personally wouldn't want him to kill, but I'm fine with the fact that he did, because, I mean, I'm open to different versions of characters, and I'm okay with that. And I understand if people don't like what they do with these characters, because all the characters, at least Batman and Superman, are very different from what they usually are. Superman, you guys are right, where he goes between all these things, and there's never really any. He doesn't go through what's the word I'm looking for?
Character arc.
Complete character arc. And it was the same problem with Man of Steel. He's just not a very interesting character in any of these movies so far. I did really like the action. Hans Zimmer's score was pretty good. It's not his best. The only thing that really stuck out to me, I mean, they have Superman's theme from Man of Steel, and it's repeated a lot in this, but I do like it. But Lex Luthor's score I really liked. It had like this kind of classical edge to it, but it also sounded somewhat eerie. I think it worked really well for his character. And speaking of Lex Luthor, I've been very conflicted about him ever since I saw the movie, and he doesn't always work. And you guys are right that I think he makes sense through most of it. At the end, you know, he's not. I guess he just goes crazy. I mean, I guess that could be the argument you make. I don't know if that's the case, but like, you know, his character doesn't make sense by the end of it. As far as his performance goes, sometimes it's a little over the top, but I was fine with it most of the time. And then there was a few scenes where I really thought he nailed it and actually came off as anything. So I really like that. Overall, it's a flawed movie. Like David said, the main problem is there's way too much going on, and the movie doesn't have time to properly cover everything, and there's a lot of unnecessary setting up for Justice League and other movies. Though I think it handled it better than like some movies, but it doesn't work because the movie's really long and it just makes it feel too long. Superman's story arc doesn't make sense. So the movie just has too much going on. There's a lot of plot holes and things. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I was smiling. I was loving the action. I was loving Batman. I was fine with Lex Luthor. Wonder Woman was good in it. I mean, she doesn't have that much to do, but overall, the actor did a good job and stuff. And I know that you don't you feel that like she just was unnecessary. But I mean, I liked her sneaking around to Bruce Wayne trying to figure out what she's doing.
No, I like the stuff with her, but it felt like it distracted from the main plot of the film and didn't add anything.
Overall, I did like her, and it was just. A lot of people said it was underwhelming finally seeing all these characters together, but I really liked it. I was just like, yeah, this is really cool. I like the beginning, which, as Thomas said, is really amazing. Another thing about it, like, Bruce Wayne's on the ground holding the logo, and then he looks up and you see Superman fighting Zod. I was like, yeah, this is really cool. It feels it's so cool seeing
I really like
together.
that.
It's like someone's going on here, and then Bruce Wayne's here. So overall, I really enjoyed it. It is a flawed movie, but I think the good things overweigh the not good things. A lot like Man of Steel. I have a similar feeling to it as I do with that movie.
Dear Blade, you will
My favorite quote is when the senator is talking to Lex Luthor and she tells him, "I'm from Kentucky, I know how to wrestle with pigs."
All right, my favorite quote is probably when Alfred says, "I hope there's enough wine in the cellar left for the next generation of Waynes, if there is a next generation of Waynes." It's very Alfred.
Okay, my favorite quote from this movie is when Perry White says, "No one buys papers anymore, Clark."
My favorite quote in this movie is when Bruce Wayne is talking to Alfred about taking out Superman, and he says something like 20 years in Gotham, how many good guys are left, how many of them stayed good, something like that. But it kind of really, I guess, made it clear how important it was for Batman to take out Superman, because he's so used to the darkness of Gotham and people like Harvey Dent and other people turning bad. And if that can happen, what if Superman turned bad or made a really bad decision, and it could be catastrophic? So I thought that was a great line.